In football, there are players who fail because they were never good enough. And then there are players like Rafael Leão, players so talented that their biggest opponent becomes themselves. A few years ago, Leão looked unstoppable. Defenders couldn't catch him, fans couldn't stop talking about him, and AC Milan finally had a superstar capable of bringing the club back to the top of European football. He wasn't just winning matches, he was deciding title races, destroying defenders, and producing moments that made football look unfair. By 2022, he had become Serie A's most valuable player and the face of AC Milan's future. Many believed he was only getting started. Some even thought he could become one of the best players in the world. But instead of continuing upward, something strange happened. The goals slowed down. The criticism grew louder. Managers started questioning him. Fans started losing patience. And the same player who once carried Milan to a league title suddenly became one of the most divisive footballers in Europe. So what happened? How does a player go from being one of football's most exciting stars to becoming the symbol of wasted potential? And is Rafael Leão really destroying his own legacy? Or is there a much bigger story hiding behind the headlines? Let's find out.
To understand Rafael Leão's downfall, you first have to understand how ridiculously talented he actually is. Because this isn't the story of an average player who overachieved for one season. This is the story of a footballer who genuinely looked destined for greatness. Leão's journey began at Sporting CP's famous academy in Portugal, the same academy that produced Cristiano Ronaldo, Luis Figo, Nani, and countless other stars. Even as a teenager, Leão looked different. He was taller than most players his age, faster than almost everyone, and he played football with a level of confidence that coaches couldn't teach. Defenders hated facing him because even when he seemed relaxed, he could explode past them in a single second. By 2018, he had reached Sporting's first team and appeared ready for a breakthrough. Then, everything changed. In one of the most shocking incidents in modern football, a group of Sporting ultras stormed the club's training ground and physically attacked players and staff. The event sent shockwaves through Portuguese football. Leão was only 18 years old. Feeling unsafe, he terminated his contract and walked away from the club. What should have been the beginning of his career suddenly became a legal nightmare. Years of court battles followed, with millions of euros in compensation claims and constant pressure hanging over his head. But football doesn't wait for anyone, and Leão needed a fresh start. He found it in France. Lille saw something special. Their recruitment team believed Leão possessed the same explosive qualities that were becoming increasingly valuable in modern football: speed, power, directness, and unpredictability. During his only season in League One, he scored 8 goals and immediately attracted attention from bigger clubs. Every time he touched the ball, something felt possible. And one club in particular was watching closely: AC Milan. At the time, Milan were desperately searching for a new superstar. The club was still trying to recover from years of decline. The glory days of Maldini, Kaká, Pirlo, and Shevchenko felt far away. Milan needed a player who could become the face of a new era, and Paolo Maldini believed he had found him. When Leão was considering his options, Maldini reportedly contacted him personally. Imagine being a young footballer and receiving a call from Paolo Maldini, one of the greatest defenders in football history and one of the biggest legends the sport has ever produced. That conversation changed everything. Leão chose Milan. The problem was that his early years weren't exactly spectacular. The talent was obvious, the consistency wasn't. One week he looked like a future Ballon d'Or contender. The next week he looked completely disconnected from the match. Fans couldn't figure him out, coaches couldn't fully trust him, and while nobody doubted his ability, the question was whether he could put everything together. Then Stefano Pioli made the decision that changed his career. Instead of using Leão centrally, Pioli moved him permanently to the left wing, and suddenly everything clicked. The transformation was incredible. Instead of receiving the ball with defenders surrounding him, Leão could attack space. Instead of wrestling with center backs, he could isolate fullbacks. Instead of playing with his back to goal, he could run directly at defenders. And when Rafael Leão runs directly at defenders, bad things usually happen. Very bad things. The 2021-22 season became his masterpiece. This was the year everything came together: the dribbling, the confidence, the decision-making, the finishing, the maturity. For the first time in his career, Leão wasn't just entertaining, he was decisive. When Milan needed a goal, he delivered. When Milan needed creativity, he delivered. When Milan needed a hero, he delivered. The title race was incredibly tight. Every point mattered, every mistake mattered, and Leão consistently showed up in the biggest moments. He scored crucial goals, created huge chances, and carried Milan through difficult matches. On the final day of the season, with the Serie A title on the line, Leão produced one of the greatest performances of his career. 3 assists in one half of complete domination. By full time, Milan were champions, their first Serie A title in 11 years, and Rafael Leão was officially the Serie A MVP at only 22 years old. This should have been the beginning of something special, and for a while, it was. The following season may have featured the best football of his entire career. Leão became even more dangerous, even more confident, and even more explosive. His performances in the Champions League elevated him to another level. Then came the Napoli moment, the moment that perfectly captured who Rafael Leão could be at his absolute peak. In the Champions League quarterfinal, one of the biggest games Milan had played in years, Leão received the ball deep inside his own half. Most players would have played a safe pass. Leão saw something else: space, opportunity, chaos. He accelerated. One defender beaten, then another, then another. Napoli players chased him desperately, but nobody could stop him, and nobody could catch him. After carrying the ball nearly the entire length of the pitch, he calmly squared it for Olivier Giroud to score. It was one of those moments that reminded everyone why football is beautiful, and it felt like the beginning of a superstar's rise. But sometimes reaching the top is easier than staying there. Because while Leão was becoming one of Europe's biggest stars, problems were slowly building behind the scenes. The sporting legal battle never truly disappeared. The compensation case continued dragging on, involving millions of euros, immense stress, and non-stop pressure. Eventually, Milan helped resolve much of the situation, but another challenge appeared immediately afterward: expectations. The moment Leão signed his massive contract extension, everything changed. Fans no longer judged him as a young prospect. They judged him as a superstar, as Milan's highest-paid player, and as the face of the entire project. And those expectations can crush players, especially players whose games naturally include risk. Because when Leão attempts something difficult and succeeds, he's brilliant. When he attempts the same thing and fails, he's accused of being lazy. And slowly, the criticism began growing louder. Not because he became a bad player, but because people expected him to become one of the best players in the world. And that's where the real problems started. And that's what makes Rafael Leão one of the most fascinating players in modern football. Because, depending on who you ask, he's either a superstar being unfairly criticized or one of the biggest wasted opportunities of his generation. The truth probably sits somewhere in the middle. Leão never stopped being talented. That's the important part. The speed never disappeared. The dribbling never disappeared. The ability to destroy defenders never disappeared. Even today, there are very few players on earth who can do what Rafael Leão does when he's fully confident. The problem is that football isn't judged by what you can do. It's judged by what you consistently do. And consistency has become the biggest obstacle standing between Leão and greatness. Over the last few years, managers have changed, tactical systems have changed, teammates have changed, and expectations have changed. But the criticism has remained remarkably similar: body language, work rate, consistency, and decision-making. The same conversations keep returning, and that's why so many Milan fans became frustrated. Not because Leão was bad, but because they had seen how good he could be. They had seen the MVP. They had seen the title winner. They had seen the player who made elite defenders look helpless. Once you've seen that version of Rafael Leão, anything less feels disappointing. That's the curse of extraordinary talent. The higher the ceiling, the harsher the criticism. Now, with his future seemingly moving away from Milan, Leão finds himself standing at the most important crossroads of his career. Because the next move could define everything. A new league, a new manager, a new environment, a fresh start. Sometimes that's exactly what a player needs. We've seen it before. Players written off at one club suddenly explode somewhere else. Careers that looked stuck suddenly come back to life. And if that happens, nobody will be surprised, because the talent has never been the problem. The question has always been whether Rafael Leão can unlock the absolute best version of himself consistently. That's what separates very good players from legends. And right now, that's the battle he's fighting. Not against defenders, not against managers, not against critics, He is fighting against expectations, against potential, and against the version of himself that the football world still believes exists. Because somewhere inside Rafael Leão is the player who carried AC Milan to a Serie A title, the player who terrified defenders across Europe, the player who looked destined to become one of football's biggest stars. The only question now is whether we'll ever see that player again. So, now that you know how Rafael Leão went from Serie A MVP to one of football's most debated stars, you're ready for the next level. Click the video on your screen right now to find out which football superstar is secretly heading toward the exact same downfall.